Hi, I'm Sarah from Heirloom Creations in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And lately, I've been playing with all the Bernina bias binders to bring you the best information possible so you can make the right choice in picking the right bias binder for you and your projects. So watch this video from start to finish to really understand all the different possibilities. From the Bernina Simple Bias Binder that will do a 1/4 inch finish to their industrial sizes of using folded or pre-folded bias tape in different sizes. So there's 3 with the folded, 3 with the non-folded, and then we're going to show you how to do curves, how to do corners with the larger bias binders. Anything like the home deck projects, look at this casserole carrier. This is the new pattern from Atkinson Designs called Hot Stuff. And a bonus pattern will be featured at the end that will add accent bias binding to your next finished quilt. And in the information in the description of this video down below, there's a link for a free pattern of how to do this. Another little fun thing I found, look at this little strawberry. It is actually a tote bag that you can take with you, and I've added bias binding around the edges. Of course, this little bag could easily be the edges of a very cute little girl shirt, or finishing your edges, any place you'd use a serger. These bias binders are ideal, and I really need to keep these in my collection and use them more often. Are you ready? Let's go! To prepare your fabric for making your very own bias binding, start off by taking Best Press, give it a good spray and press. That way this will kind of give it a nice heavy starched feel, and when you start cutting your bias strips and sewing them together and feeding them through the bias binder, they're going to work great. Now notice how large a piece of fabric I'm starting with. The larger the better. That's going to make the fewer amount of seams it will take to make all your bias strips. People always ask me, how do I get that first cut to go on the bias from our large piece of fabric? And for me, the easiest way to do it is just look for the 45-degree line on the ruler. Place the ruler along the edge of the fabric, and that's going to give you your first cut all the way through. As you cut more bias strips, you may need to pull the fabric down and match up your raw edges again, and you'll easily be able to reach across the whole entire strip with your ruler. Sewing all the strips are a cinch when using the Clearly Perfect Angles sewing machine cling. This is going to put a nice even guide. So as I'm sewing corner to corner on my strips, I just need to put my presser foot down. I've shortened the stitch length, and then all I need to do is actually just keep the corner I'm shooting for along the center line. So as we separate these out, we're going to actually take and cut our seams down to 1/8 inch. Also too, if you clip off the little ears, that's less bulk later as it goes through the bias binders. Time to press the seams open. Give them a little shot of Best Press and press them flat. The Bernina Simple Bias Binder is actually quite easy to use. First, attach it to the number 75 adapter, so attach to the machine, and then we're going to take our strip of fabric and slide it down the cone. Now I tend to do this with the foot off the machine. It's a little easier because I can then just get the stiletto right in there and kind of help it down through the opening. Once I can kind of pull it out this underneath side, I can go ahead and attach it to the machine. Now we're talking finer fabrics here. We're not talking real thick fabrics, but once we kind of get this started, I'm going to go ahead and take a few stitches, just make sure my needle position's where I want it. But the fabric that you're going to insert, it needs to be on the thinner side. So as we get it going here, just going to let the machine kind of do the work for us as we take and hold both the fabric and the bias, and just keep it going through the machine. Now I'm approaching a corner here. You'll see how easy it is to continue around an area. And just keep it inserted there. And then if you ever just need bias strips made, you can continue sewing off the edge. I usually like to keep it connected in there and then just clip it off. And as I need my next piece to be inserted, the bias that I've made lots of, that is going to be all in there. And see how pretty that edge is on both the front and the back. Next, we have the Bernina binder attachment number 87. Now, this is a commercial grade bias binder, and it comes in 3 different sizes depending on your final size you want on your project. So, from 1/4 inch, 3/8, and a 1/2 inch. So, let's see what's actually in one of these boxes when you open it up. So, you're going to find instructions and the most amazing bias binder made for the home sewing machine market. So this is actually going to attach the machine. I know it looks confusing, but let me show you how easy it is going to be and how you can put it on fabric that has been quilted. You've got your batting and you want to have the ability to get around thicker fabrics. First, you're going to want to match the correct foot for your machine. Number 95 or number 95C is required to use any of the Bernina bias binder attachments. For those of you with the 9mm sized machines, your foot is actually skinnier on the side that the bias binder is going to come and hug against. On the machines that are 5mm wide, your foot is going to have a little notch out of the side here. And that, again, will be where part of the unit is going to rest. So put on your appropriate foot. In with the accessories of the bias binder, there is a screw. You're going to move the attachment till you can see the 2 openings. I always put it in the screw that is closest to the foot, and that's how we're going to get it to attach. Next, you're going to slide the unit up against the foot. If you do it while the foot's down, it's a little easier. So hug it right up against. I had to actually loosen the screws back here to slide it just a little bit closer so I can get it to be perfect. And then make sure it's kind of aligned with the lines on your throat plate. Tighten that down. I like it because you can finger tighten that easily. Next, you're going to take the unit, and this is that little finger. As it slides up into that little notch, it will stop right where it needs to be, and then tighten it down with the other screw. Great. And that's easy to loosen later. We're going to show you how to turn a corner. We're going to actually slide that out and back in. Awesome. Now, this particular attachment is used with the pre-folded bias tape here. So we have taken a 2-inch strip, folded it in half, pressed it with the Clover tape maker, size number 50. And now I'm going to actually slide it into the opening here. So up front, and this is what makes this unit so precise. It's just so smooth. Look how easy it is to just slide it right in there. And this mouth right here, this size is what's going to allow us to do the larger projects. As you start, you might want to take a few stitches, test out your stitch length, and once you're ready, you can just slide your project right in there and then let it go. This is super simple. It is as easy as it gets. Just slide it in. As you have a corner or a curve, I should say, you just keep that right in there, and it does the work for you. We could also be inserting some lace or ribbon as we go along here. We've got plenty of room for extra thick fabrics. Now, I'm going to actually show you next how to turn a corner. So we're going to come right up to the corner, right to the very edge. The last stitch needs to go to the edge of your fabric. And if you'd like, take a few stitches to secure it backwards. Once you're done, we're actually going to take it out of the machine and cut the threads. I found that was easier. So just kind of slide it through. The bias binding is going to stay in the unit. We'll pull it back later once we get it all positioned perfectly. So you can just take your bias binding. I'm going to set your fabric right into the groove. And what you're going to see on the front is what I'm doing with my fingers also on the back. So I'm just going to fold that over and put a pin in it. So as I hold it on the front, you can see the back has the same exact thing. All right. Now, when I put a pin in, I'm really just trying to hold it. I do have to keep in mind that I don't want this pin to really come out very far on the tip because it has to come back in where the unit is. So you kind of have to just kind of finesse it back into position there. Do a little flip back. So that'll just back right on up. Also, too, this would be easy if I wanted to slide that out, which I think I actually need to do to get this to come back in. There we go. All right, so it's ready to be reset. Lower down the presser foot if you want. Tighten that back down, and then slide everybody back into position. Again, that's how nice and open it is. We can bring that right back in there. And I'm looking to set my needle down right where the miter of the corner has. All right, needle down. I'm going to just sink that in. a few stitches, even if you might take a stitch or two backwards just to secure. And then start stitching. Once you do this a time or two, it's quite easy to perfect. And really too, if you ever want to do just some nice bias ties, just keep stitching right off your fabric, and then you can have the results that you're looking for. Again, I kind of keep that all in there, so when I want to put my next piece of fabric in, I can just go ahead and do that. And look at that corner. And the more you do it, the easier it's going to become there. Perfect. The third Bernina bias binder in the family is binder attachment number 88. Now this looks similar to the one we just used, except it is very different. This time the opening or the mouth will handle bias strips that are not pre-folded. So all you're doing is cutting fabric strips, sewing them together, and they're ready to go. Now the final or largest size that this will sew and finish at is 3/8 of an inch, but that still is large enough to go around some of your quilt fabrics, thicker fabrics. The one we just used previous to this, number 87, its final size or largest size it will do is a 1/2 inch. So that one is the biggest one, and then this one is the second largest one. But you don't have to actually do the folding of your strips. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to just take our strip, slide it down the opening, help it with a little stiletto. We're still using foot number 95 or 95C, depending on your machine. Take a few stitches, and it has already tucked and folded the fabric for us. Lift it up, slide your project in, and away you go. Test out your stitch length, maybe move your needle position over as needed, and you can handle the corners and curves just like before. Isn't that amazing? And again, all we've done is cut our strips. Beautiful every single time. This binder attachment comes in 3 total sizes, depending on your finish size. This one, I used the smallest size, the 28 millimeter, cut my strips 1 1/8, fed it through the opening, and had a finish size of 1/4 inch. There's also number 32 millimeter bias binder attachment, number 88, and it will finish out 5/16 of a size, so a little bit bigger than this, and so you have choices for all different weights of fabrics. So the binder attachments, yes, they are a professional grade, but they also give you perfect results every single time. The first step is to take your binding and fold it in half. This is your regular 2.5 or 2 1/4 inch binding you'd put on a regular quilt. But before we do it, we're going to add the accent bias binding. So I've picked my favorite bias binder, the unfolded one, and this is the 28 millimeter. So it's finishing up about 1/4 inch. And you're going to put the binding on the fold. So the fold's running through. We're just adding the little stitching. And do your whole entire strip. Next step, take your quilt, flip it to the back side, and attach the walking foot. You're going to do just like you're used to sewing the binding on to the quilt, except it's from the opposite side. Stop 1/4 inch from the end, back stitch, make your normal miter corner, and continue to stitch. The last step is the top stitching. You're almost done. Just take your fabric, take it to your iron, press it to the front side, and start mitering the corners. As you miter the corners, they're going to position themselves so they'll come right together. When you're ready, put your walking foot on. If you've got an edge stitch, stitch in the ditch foot, or just a regular edge stitch foot will work as well. So I've got this pressed and stitching. I've pinned the miter in place so it's held as I approach it. I'm going to go ahead and stitch right up to the pivot point and then turn, and it'll be perfect every single time. Now that's sewing on binding easy. This is a great way to use your bias binder and add a little extra accent touch to your next quilting project.